friends, thanks for joining us today. This week's media demonstration video is about the Titanic. We're going to be using crayons and watercolor paint. Before we get started though, I wanted to give you just a couple of bits of information about how I choose my art lessons. So this is an oldie but a goodie. I've been doing these art lessons for over 20 years, since 1999, so a really long time now. And I have literally hundreds of art lessons. I make new lessons every year and I incorporate them into what I teach, but I also have art lessons that I have made, like I said, over the years, and this is an example of one. So this one I've done probably about 4 or 5 times now in the last 20 years, and I only do the art lessons every 4 years. So if we do this one this week, we're not going to see this one again in after school art for 4 years. And so I do that so kids, if they do it in kindergarten, they might do it again in 5th grade, but by then their artwork has changed so much that it's cool to have a reference, like 2 to compare. So this is just an example of one from a while back, and I wanted to show you there's some examples of how these things work. So this is one example that I made a while back. This is probably back from, I don't know if I didn't put my name or the date on there, and that's a no-no. That's why we always do that now. But this is probably from like 2010 or something, and you can see it's a little different than this one. It's a little closer up. The iceberg's in a different place. This one was done with watercolor crayons, so there's always a lot of ways to finish these drawings, and I'm going to have this in the art lesson this week so you can see this as an example. But also I have this great color copy from a kid's artwork, and this is definitely interesting. This says it was made by Megan, age 8. So this is a color copy. This is not the art lesson. She has her original at home. But you can see how cool this looks. And this one was done in oil pastel. And so it's just really fun and interesting to see how the art lessons change over the years. I update them, I get new visuals, I print things out to give us inspiration. And this is a finished example of what this one will look more like this time. You can see I've made the icebergs a little more complex. I've got more ice floating in the water, and I've added some of these lines that were on the ship. So in this one, like I said, this week we're going to do wax resist with crayons and watercolor paint. So I just wanted you to see that there's a lot of different ways to do the same thing, and it's always fun to think about how you can kind of reinvent it as you go forward. All right, guys, it's time to get started. So one more thing, actually. These magnets, guys, I have been mailing these out every week now. I'm so happy to do that. This is what I want to do. That's why I bought them. This is my logo. This is the name of my business, Arts Hub. And I am the founder and the artist of this business, which means it belongs to me, and I am the main person that creates these art lessons and teaches the lessons. So if you want one of these magnets, all you have to do is subscribe to my YouTube channel and share the videos with your friends, and then tell me about it in after school art. When you do that, I'm going to give you my thumbs up. I'll give you a double thumbs up because I love that so much. It helps me, guys. It helps me a lot. And I will mail you one of these magnets with a personal note that says thank you, just because it really means that much to me, guys. All right, now it's time to get started. So we're going to be using crayons and watercolor paint this time, and it creates something called wax resist. So I have this Crayola manual sharpener. I've talked about manual sharpeners before. This is great because it has 2 size holes here. So check it out. You can sharpen your pencils, which is awesome. But what I really like about this one is, look at that, guys. It has the old crayon sharpener. You can see I've already sharpened all these crayons. I think you can see that. But what's nice about this is you can just push that crayon in there and you can sharpen it a little bit, and you keep on using those crayons. Those are really great. But sometimes things get stuck, right? And so what you need to do is take, this is a skewer, like a, what are those things called? You know, for kebabs. I can't think of the word, but anyway. You probably have these in your kitchen, and they're nice because they're pointy and you can get out the crayon wax or the leads if they get stuck in there. So that's just a little tip. It really helps to have one of these, and I think it's called a wooden skewer actually. So that's what I advise you guys to have if you don't have one already. It really helps. Also, I've got my paint tray ready. I've got my paper towel, and I've got my 3 sizes of brushes. And so any brush will do, but honestly, it really helps if you have multiple brushes with multiple sizes. That's because there's just different things to paint, and you're going to need different sizes. I've got a cup of water, and I have my crayons here, and I've been sharpening them, which I think is fun. All right, guys. If you notice in the example I showed you earlier, right, There are no lifeboats in the water in this example. You can choose to add these or leave these out. The lifeboats are part of the story of the Titanic sinking. It is not the only story, but it's really interesting if you want to add them. It's just something in this example. It's something that can be added or left out. We'll talk about that again when it's time to do the art lesson. All right, so without further ado, I've been saying that a lot lately, but I like the word ado. It means without waiting any longer, let's go. So I love crayons and wax resist stuff because you don't have to color every single nook and cranny. What do I mean by nooks and crannies? I mean, there are some white spaces showing. You see, a lot of white spaces showing, but it is not a problem. And so that's because when we go over this a little bit later with the black paint, and it doesn't have to be black. In my example, I did black and blue and purple. So when you go over it with the watercolor paint, I should say, it's going to make it look really cool. But what I want you to think about is showing a little bit of, light and shadow on each thing. Notice how I'm not scribbling, but I'm also not being super careful either. I'm going to go back in with a little bit of the side of this now to make it look a little bit smoky. So this is the smoke coming out of the smokestacks as the ship was sinking. So I'm going to add just a little of that. There you go. That looks pretty good. All right, so the next thing, I'm going to brush all these little crumbs off. I'm just going to keep on going here. And I'm going to go into time lapse now because you know how to color with crayons. But after this, I'm going to show you how to do the watercolor paint, and then it'll be time for our conclusion. Alrighty, so as you can see, I did some work here, and one thing I want to point out to you is when you're coloring white on top of white paper, just remember when you put the watercolor paint on later, that's when it's going to show up. So you really have to just kind of be careful to get into all these little areas to make sure you really get the white in where it's supposed to be. And so don't forget about those little spots. Also, as you can see, I made these people in shadow. They are not supposed to be quite so prominent, so that's why I'm making it kind of purple and blue down there. And I really want to show off the ship and the iceberg and the sky. So far it's looking pretty good. I just wanted to also say, guys, like I did on these smokestacks, you can always just kind of create a little bit of a mixing and blending on here. Even though they're crayons, you can create a little bit of extra visual interest by adding a little extra color. You can see how the moon and the stars now are kind of similar to these smokestacks. And also these little windows. So these are a lot of little windows, and you don't have to fill everyone in yellow, but it's kind of interesting if you make sure that some of them are yellow. So it means that there was a light on inside. All right, guys. So to use the watercolor paint, let's go ahead and get started with that. So I'm going to reverse this here. I'm going to turn this around. And I'm going to get my brush wet. And for this, I'm going to just go right into my black. And so when you first get your paint wet, if it's bone dry, like these right now are bone dry, guys. So I'm going to get the black wet, and I'm going to get the blue wet and the purple. And that's because in order to get paint, you have to have water and this little cake in these little trays. They have to mix and blend together. So I really want a bluish black. So I'm going to take a moment here on my mixing tray, and I am going to take the blue. I'm going to lift it like this on my brush, bring it over here, put a little purple in there, and then take more black. What we really want is a really rich dark color. Okay. All right. So with watercolor paint and wax crayon to create what's called wax resist. The wax in the crayon is going to resist the water and the paint. And so what a lot of people are confused about is they think, uh-oh, I need to fill in all these little tiny spaces in the sky. No, you're supposed to go directly over the top. See what I did there? Go directly over the top. So just go back and forth You can have it be more black, you can have it be more blue, you can have it be whatever you want, but don't hesitate to add that paint to your brush. You notice I'm using the larger brush, by the way. And just go back and forth right over everything, and wherever that crayon is not, the paint is going to sink into the paper, and that makes it look super cool. So that's what I want you to be doing, guys. That's what I want you to be thinking about. And you can layer and layer and layer and layer your paint, but don't stop there. Go all the way down into the water. You don't have to use blue paint just because it's water. What we want to do is create this like really cool sort of dark nighttime effect. So here I am, I'm adding black now. I'm gonna fill in all these little spots. And I just think this looks so cool, and I hope you guys do too. This is a really cool art lesson. This is something that you can share with your families, and they will know exactly what it is. So, all right, guys, look how cool that is. All right, so last things, want to just dry it off a little bit, soak up any extra water with a paper towel. Notice how I'm not rubbing it, I'm blotting it. I'm just kind of going straight up and down. And that is looking pretty great. Now, I love that. I'm not going to make the same mistake though. Look, I already put my name and the date and what it is. So I know in the future when I look at this, I'll know exactly what day it was when I did it. That's it, guys, for today. I hope you enjoyed this. I know I did. I really hope you will share our information so that I can send you a magnet and tell me about it in class. All right? I will see you next time, friends.